is my partner in crime, Dan Turner. You can follow him on Twitter at Eagle Dan. How's it going tonight, Dan?
It's going well. How are you?
I'd be doing a lot better if two guys that were in here with me didn't have a bunch of Eagle stuff on, but such is life. We got
the guy with the Giants flag.
Hey, at least I'm not a fair weather fan because we've been terrible since we won the Super Bowl back in 2012. So
I know it seems to be you're a fan of toilet paper with that stuff behind you.
Hey, toilet paper is valuable these days. But with us is a very special guest, a guy who I'm lucky enough to call a friend. He's from the FTN network, Chris Meaney. What's going on, man? I appreciate you hopping on.
Yeah, Jay, it's good to talk to you. You and I always chatting back and forth, quite often over the past few years. So it's nice to jump on the show. Thanks for thinking of me and happy to be here. And I'm loving Dan's Eagle tee. And, I knew you were a Giants guy. I knew Dan was an Eagles guy, seeing in his Twitter handle. So I had to go upstairs quickly, get the hat and get the hoodie on, and I'm ready to rock.
That's
wonderful choice.
Yeah, it's all right. I fully expected it. So for those of you who were expecting to see Matt with us, who's going to be our new co-host, he's a little under the weather tonight. So feel better, Matt. We'll see you next week. He's still going to be a part of the team. But for those of you, it's your first time tuning in, what we like to do, we want this to be an interactive show. We're here to help you. We want to answer your questions. We send out a tweet from the Going for Two Live Twitter page. So if you're not following that, it's at Going for the number 2 Live. We send out a tweet on Wednesdays and Thursdays asking for your questions. If you get them in beforehand, we're able to look at them, go a little bit more in depth, but throw your questions in the chat. That's what we're here for. So we're going to start off with that. Chris, we'll go with you first. Excuse me, Meaney. I can't call you Chris. It's just not in me. From Alex from Twitter asks, if Christian McCaffrey plays, I need to start 2 from this group. But if Christian McCaffrey's out, I need to start 3. And we got a pretty decent list. Terry McLaurin, CEH, Mike Evans, Dobbins, Gibson, Juju, Claypool, and Justin Jefferson. For me, I'd go with Scary Terry and CEH. And if Christian McCaffrey's out, which it sounds like he's going to play, I would probably throw Justin Jefferson in there as well with the good matchup against the Lions. What do you think, Meaney?
Yeah, I agree. I think you're spot on there. A lot of people are probably scared of your guy Bradbury, who's had a pretty solid season this year. I want to give him a lot of credit.
If the Giants have it's Bradbury.
He's been good. He's locked down some pretty solid wide receivers this season. But Terry McLaurin, just using some of our free tools over at FTN. And one thing I like to look at is air yards and average depth of targets. And, Terry McLaurin has almost 50% of his team's air yards, which is it's crazy to think about. That's number 1 in all of football. So I got to go with Terry McLaurin. He's a lock to get about double-digit targets. So you got to go there. I think CMC plays as well, and I agree CEH. If I was thinking maybe Dobbins if CEH doesn't play, but you're right. I like the matchup with Justin Jefferson there against the Lions, and that's who I'll pick.
What you think, Dan?
I think we're going to make it 3 for 3. I think McLaurin is doing really well. I know he has a tougher matchup with Bradbury, but he has 7 targets in the last 2 games. They're going to move him around, so he's not going to face Bradbury all game. CEH, I think, obviously will be splitting with Bell. But I don't think I think it's been overstated a bit how the split's going to go. He has a plus matchup with Carolina, so I'm definitely going with those 2.
So clean sweep, all of us. We McLaurin, CEH, and if CMC's out, we'll go Justin Jefferson as well. Next question is going to be from Duke Fartworth on Twitter. Is Cam Akers worth a redraft roster spot? He's available on the wire. It's going to be a no for me, redraft. I still like him long-term in Dynasty, but unless, this Henderson injury turns into something more, I really think he's just, waiver wire fodder at this point.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The one thing I will say is that, he could potentially be a home run threat on your bench. I would only pick him up if you were in a really good spot in the standings. Like if you're fighting for a playoff spot, you're outside looking in, Cam Akers really doesn't do anything for you. But if you're comfortably in a first, second spot, looking like potential buy, you're not really feeling your running back depth, it's possible. An injury probably needs to happen for Cam Akers to be relevant, but this is a team in LA. Nobody's run the football more than them. So the offensive line looks good. If anything did happen to Brown, or you mentioned Henderson, if they're on bye, but if you start to hear some practice reports, like if he doesn't practice all of a sudden next Monday and Tuesday, then you're really too late to get Cam Akers. Akers, people will be spending fab and, using their top priority to get him. So if you can afford to stash him and if you're in a good spot, I would do that. But yeah, he's been pretty frustrating. I've been a Cam Akers fan. I like his talent. I think he's the most talented back on that team, but Sean McVay is just rotating through mostly everybody but him.
Just like Green Bay, why do they use that draft capital, take them in the second round to not use them? But
right. Yeah.
Such is life. Dan, what you think?
I'm going to have to disagree. I think he is worth a roster spot. I mean, just before the show, we were talking about spending fab on friggin' Matt Breida for God's sakes. So I think if, he's healthy and even if Henderson is only hurt for like a game, there's still going to be some weeks where he's going to carry the load. So I think at this point with COVID and the injuries popping up, if you can get a healthy running back that might see some time, I mean, that's definitely worth a bench spot.
Yeah. I think it all depends too on, how deep your benches are. And, just like I said a couple weeks ago where you disagreed with me, Dan, but if you've got somebody at the end of your bench, like a Golden Tate or somebody that just taking up space, like our buddy Jake Seeley always said, the Greg Jennings rule, I've turned that into the Golden Tate rule now. I'd much rather, have a Cam Akers on the end of the bench for that lottery ticket than a scrub like Golden Tate or somebody along those lines.
I think you could buy in dynasty leagues too, potentially, maybe. Yeah. It's possible. Like if you have Akers in a dynasty league, you probably took him pretty early, but now is the time to go grab him. Maybe somebody who owns Akers is actually doing really well this year and they're just going for it. Because I always tell people to go for it in dynasty leagues too. And I'm not saying to just get rid of Akers off your dynasty squad, but if you're rebuilding, I would just check in.
Yep, absolutely. Got a couple of questions from the chat we'll jump into too. John from Facebook asked, should I play Brown or Justin Jefferson? Meaney, we'll start with you on that one. What do you think?
I'm assuming that's not John Brown. I would play Brown. It's a tough spot, I guess, against Chicago, but I know he's been disappointing lately, but I still will go with Brown there. It's really close to me, as we talked about Jefferson earlier, like the matchup, but I'll lean Brown there.
Dan, who are you going with?
I'm going Jefferson. I don't know how Brown's going to be. I think he's a big question mark. I think, like I was talking about like last week, people are expecting, a lot from him really, really quickly. So I think with Jefferson showing that he can get it done, I'd feel better going with him.
Yeah, he said it's Antonio.
Oh, it's Antonio. Yeah, well, no question. I'll go Justin Jefferson there.
Yeah,
it's a little bit risky to roll out AB, but in a couple weeks, ask me, and I'll probably be rolling out AB.
I think if you got AB, I would trade him right now. Yeah, he's got that upside, but
get
what you can get for him now. I do think that Brady's going to force him the ball to make a point, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him get a touchdown. But I think Godwin's still going to be the guy in that offense. So with the matchup with Justin Jefferson, it's easy for me. I'd definitely go Jefferson. Our guy Marty asked PPR Swift or Judy.
Yeah, Marty, my guy, Scotian brother. I think I go Swift there. No Golladay. Maybe we get a few more targets out of him. I know Matt Patricia is extremely frustrating, and I actually really like Judy this week. But I'll lean Swift. I just usually always take the running back in those guaranteed touches.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I lean running back as well, and Judy's disappeared at points. Tim Patrick's really had a big role in this offense, and I still don't trust Drew Lock. But through the first half of the game last week, I think he had like 3 or 4 fantasy points, and then came on at the end. So give me the guaranteed work, even if he is still splitting with the immortal one, Adrian Peterson. Swift has that. He can make your day on one play. So for me, I'm going to go with Swift.
Yeah, I agree with both of you guys. I think with the running back, especially with Golladay out, there's really, besides Marvin Jones, isn't that many people that you can count on to get the targets. So if they give those targets, even a couple of them over to Swift, they could have a good fantasy game.
Clean sweep. We'll go Swift for you on that one, Marty. David Webb from Facebook asks, would you play McKinnon or Fournette PPR? Even though they say Hasty's going to get most of the work, I would go with McKinnon just because I don't trust Bruce Arians. And even though Fournette got to work last week, he could go back to Rojo as long as he doesn't fumble the ball. So it's a pretty close call, but I just think that, with San Francisco having nobody left, McKinnon, I think, is going to be a big part of the offense tonight. So for me, I'd go McKinnon.
That's probably the safer play. You brought up Jake earlier, and I was on with him, and we had a very similar question. I'm going to lean Fournette. I like what I've seen from him over the past couple of weeks. He's definitely the short yardage back there. He's going to be the goal line guy. I know the Saints, it's a really tough matchup. They haven't allowed a 100-yard rusher in 50 games. It's crazy how strong that run defense has been. But Montgomery had 89 last week, flirted with breaking that streak. And Fournette's got 13 targets in the 2 games he's come back. Jones, I know Bruce Arians is so tough to trust. He really is. You can't. He's lying all the time.
Whatever he says, just expect the opposite.
Yeah, for sure. But Jones had that fumble, and then he really didn't get on the field again. And he was so good for 3 straight games. And Fournette just came in and really just took over. And season high in terms of carries and opportunities last week. So, maybe he can continue to ride that out. I like Fournette a lot, actually, the rest of the way. I know he's a very risky play, but I love this offense. He's going to fall into the end zone a couple times when they get down near the red zone. So I'll lean Fournette. I think he has a slightly higher ceiling.
Dan, you're the tiebreaker.
I'm going to agree with Chris.
Probably smart.
It's just because of the Eagles. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's you can't understate that fumble last week. I know that Arians hates when that happens, and also Brady. Brady, is known to chew people out when they make mistakes like that. And Fournette came in and played really well. If he had come in and didn't perform, but he did. So going forward, I think that you'll see that Fournette getting more and more of the carries and targets, and he's really been really good in the passing game. So I think it's, this week, especially with the matchup, I think I'm going to go Fournette.
All right, so 2-1 Fournette for you. And we got Jared from Facebook for you guys, apparently. J-Jaw for president. Dan was a president of the J-Jaw fan club, but obviously that didn't work out.
It worked out that one week when he outscored LaVisca, didn't it?
Hey, you're hating on my boy LaVisca. I'm telling you. Watch. Now that, he's got somebody that can throw the ball, just watch out.
That was a brutal pick by Howie, passing on DK Metcalf and taking JJ Arcega-Whiteside. That's a huge yikes.
It's not like Metcalf has done anything.
No, not at all. Terry McLaurin too passed on him as well for JJ.
Yeah.
Anyway,
got a question from our guy Kyle Senro, who's on the Monday Night War Room show. PPR Traquan Smith or Malik Taylor?
I'll go with Traquan. It's I don't love it, to be honest, but it does still seem like Michael Thomas is limited, and who knows, man? At this point, he's definitely not a lock. I mean, he was limited on Friday and then didn't suit up, so I'll side with Traquan there.
Dan, what you
think? I
agree
on Traquan. I think Malik Taylor is just a case of throwing any receiver at Green Bay to see if one sticks. So I think Traquan has, with Sanders and MT not being 100%, even if they do play, I think that he'll get the targets needed to have a good game.
Yep, I completely agree. And you've with Sanders too. We all know that Michael Thomas is banged up, but Sanders coming back from COVID, you've seen some guys that have come back from it haven't been 100% right away. It's showing the production. So for me, Traquan, he's had some boom bust weeks. He's had a couple of multiple, I think, at least one game with multiple touchdowns. So he's shown he can make your day with one play. So I'd rather take a chance on the upside. He's got a floor of 0, but he can make your day. So with next question, we're going to go from I'm Right Sports on Twitter. What is Travis Fulgham's worth in Dynasty? So a little bit of an open-ended question here. Perfect for you two guys, though. So, Chris, we'll start with you. How do you value Travis Fulgham dynasty-wise?
Yeah, this is tough. I'm not selling him. I would hold him. I look at the future of Philadelphia. I don't see a future there for Deshaun Jackson or Alshon Jeffrey. I don't know if I see a future there for Zach Ertz either. And they've just been, the Eagles, we just talked about JJ Arcega-Whiteside and, all the guys that they've missed throughout the years and drafting wide receivers. And they seem to have somebody there that Carson Wentz likes. I mean, he's a big body. He's went up against some top corners this year since he entered the year. Week 4 this season, I mean, the Lions drafted him and just cut him. I mean, the Packers had him on their practice squad too. I mean, they could use the second wideout, couldn't they? And they just cut him as well. I mean, since week 4, he's number 1 in air yards. He's 6th in targets. He's 4th in touchdowns. He's 2nd in red zone targets. He's 1st in end zone targets. He's 2nd in 40-yard receptions, and he has the 2nd most fantasy points out of anybody. in fantasy football besides quarterbacks since week 4, just behind Dalvin Cook, who had that monster game last week. He looks legit. He looks good. I view him as a low end, maybe wide receiver 2. I think a lot of these rookies like Ruggs and Rager, Ayuk, Chenault you brought up, I like them more. Mike Williams I like more. Christian Kirk I like more. But ahead of guys like A.J. Green, Mecole Hardman, Anthony Miller, both guys out of Indy, Paris Campbell, Michael Pittman, I think he's at worst maybe a wide receiver 3. So I think that if you have him in a dynasty league, you hold him. And, trying to acquire him now at this point is probably not ideal. It's probably an off-season move. You can maybe get him a little bit cheaper, especially after the draft. If the Eagles try to address the wide receiver position again. But I heard Adam Kaplan on Sirius XM Radio on Jeff Ratcliffe's show, also works at FTN, and he was talking him up as a for sure locked and loaded wide receiver X, even if Alshon Jeffrey returned this season. And I believe it. He's, like I said, big body wide receiver, can go and get it. And it's exactly what Carson Wentz needs, somebody that he can trust, especially inside the red zone. So I think at worst case, he's a wide receiver 3 in dynasty leagues.
Dan, as he was giving all those stats about Fulgham, your smile just kept creeping up and creeping up. Your face got a little flushed too. It looked like you got excited over there talking about it.
I did. It's nice to have a receiver that's worth a damn.
Yeah.
Chris made a great case. He did all his stats. There's not really much I can add to that. Just a couple things. I think that Fulgham is pretty much what we expected J-Jaw to actually become, to be honest. I think he's the guy that goes up. Carson Wentz has trust in him. He'll throw to him, which when he's not completely open, which he doesn't really do with anyone else. You see like the future in Philly without Ertz. We can reasonably expect next year to have Fulgham, Rager, and a bunch of new guys, to be honest. Maybe Ward stays. So I think he's locked in there. I think that I'm probably a little more upside than what Chris has. I have him as probably like a high upside wide receiver too. I think that if he can continue, there's no reason why he can't. He's gone up against some good corners, and everyone is expecting the shooter drop and him to turn back into a pumpkin, and he just keeps producing. So there's no reasonable expectation for him to not produce anymore. So if he continues to produce like that, and he's pretty much, with everyone being hurt, the only one that can actually do something at the receiver position with the ball until Rager gets 100% healthy, then I would expect him to be worth a lot in Dynasty. I would agree that you shouldn't trade for him right now because he's probably at the peak of what his value is going to be. But even if he goes into the offseason, I think you're looking at least a first-round pick for him.
Well, and the acquisition cost of him too, he was basically free. So I would rather take the chance of having him on my roster. If he winds up, falling on his face, it is what it is. It didn't cost you much, but that's the type of things that set your teams over the top when you get a guy like that for free. And he becomes this wide receiver 2, flirts with wide receiver 1 production from time to time. What do you guys think, though, about Goddard not being there when he's having this breakout? You think he's going to, when he's back, he was back this week, but he wasn't up to full speed. You think he's going to knock Fulgham down a few spots?
He may. Sorry, Dan, to jump in there. I think he may potentially, especially, just the targets, right? I mentioned the targets and all the air yards he has had, but Dan brought up a good point, and he's spot on when talking about Carson Wentz and the fact that it's almost like tunnel vision for this guy. He has no problem throwing the ball his way, double coverage, and part of that is because, like I said earlier, he's just a big body wide receiver. He can go up and grab it, and so I think potentially when Goddard, you got the bye this week, he's going to play a little bit more in the offense, but I still think he's going to be fine. At worst case, I view him as a wide receiver 3 the rest of the way.
I agree. I think that I feel like if Goddard comes back, it actually helps him, because right now, if you look at him, even with Rager coming back, he's still hurt. There's literally no one else for the defense to pay attention to receiver wise. We're trying out Richard Rodgers as our tight end 1 right now. So when you get these guys healthy with Rager getting healthy and when Goddard comes back, that's more people for the defense to pay attention to. And he may not have the same target share that he does now, but I think he'll get a lot better quality targets. And even with Ertz gone, as Chris said, Wentz has no problem feeding him the ball. So I don't think it's going to hurt him much. I think it might actually help him.
Our guy Marty, I feel the same way as you, Marty. He said all this ego talk is making me want to puke. I know, but questions asked, so we got to address the questions. So I agree, Marty. Do you want to talk about Ben DiNucci? Is that what you want, Marty? We got another question from Facebook from Jason. I need 1 running back slot and 1 flex spot. Hasty tonight, Montgomery, and DJ Chark.
I go Hasty and Montgomery. Like I said earlier, I usually just lean with the running backs and the guaranteed touches. I liked what I saw from Montgomery last week. 26 opportunities, I believe, the second most he's ever had, and over 20 carries, the third most he's ever had in a game. It seems like Matt Nagy's, starting to finally figure it out. He played 86% of the snaps. He's getting a lot of the work. He's running a ton of routes this season without Tariq Cohen, and Hasty's just, rip the name off the back of the jersey, take the number away, put on the San Fran jersey, and have Kyle Shanahan run the plays. It just seems like whoever running back is playing for San Fran, they just seem to get it done.
Dan, who are you going with out of those three?
I agree. I think Hasty and Montgomery is the play. There's someone called Jake Lutton throwing a DJ Shark. I honestly think that name is made up. Yeah. I never heard of him beforehand. He's apparently a
great player from Madden.
6th round pick or something from Oregon State. You can't trust that kind of that in his first start ever. You can't trust that Shark is gonna perform. And I think with everyone on San Francisco pretty much not playing, Hasty is going to get the volume tonight to do well.
Yeah, and I'm with you guys. I think those are the two right calls. Like Chris said, I lean running back. And even with Minshew in there, Chark's been up and down the season. So, yeah, they're going to air the ball out more, but play it safe. He's got a higher upside than the other guys, but Montgomery's getting all the work, especially with Tariq going down. He's getting the passing work as well. And I was looking into him last week. I was on with the Dynasty Junkies looking at some stats about Montgomery, and he's one of the ranks the lowest in the league. I think the only person he was behind was Frank Gore. He was only ahead of Frank Gore in yards before contact when getting the ball, but he was like 6th in the league yards after contact. So it's not necessarily him. It's as terrible as that Bears offensive line is. So yeah. I was actually looking to poo-poo Montgomery and looking into things. He actually is better than I realized. It's just the Bears have just been a hot mess, but he's getting the volume, and the same thing with Hasty is, there's nobody left. So you got to go with the guy who's getting that guaranteed volume.
Yeah. So. And I will add on maybe for Chark, Bradley Roby is a corner that I respect. I know he's not quite as good as years past. He had a couple, I don't want to say elite years, but that's not a great matchup for Chark, especially with, a guy we've never heard of throwing the football.
Yeah, exactly. And hopefully my guy Laviska can get more involved. Hopefully they throw him all over the field. So the more he gets involved, I still think Chark's number one, but I could see Viska becoming the 1A in that offense. And we've got one from some guy named Dan Turner. Is that the guy over here? But
it's like a moron.
Yeah. Pick 2 out of DJ Dallas, Edwards, P. Ryan. Ooh, this is getting ugly. Howard, Fournette, McKissick, Gallman, Moss, Hines, Lindsey, and I'm assuming DJ is David Johnson.
Correct.
Yeah, if Hyde is out for me, I'm going DJ Dallas and Edwards. DJ, same thing. He wasn't that productive, but he got the volume. And right now, if you got a guy that's healthy and getting the volume, especially in an offense like Seattle's, he did well. I think he got somewhere, I can look it up exactly, but he got 16, 18 fantasy points. And, Edwards, he's with Drake underperforming. I think he was going to take over this backfield anyways. And now that Edwards, who's not Edmonds.
Gus Edwards.
Oh, I was thinking it was Edmonds. I'm sorry.
Wishes it was Edmonds.
Yeah.
Right. That'd be easy.
Yeah. That's the last one. Edwards is probably the safe. You're going to get, if he gets a touchdown, roughly 10-ish points, but not a lot of upside. I like Dobbins a lot more. And they said today that as the year goes on, they're going to get Dobbins more and more involved in this offense. So probably Lindsey for me. I think he's better than Melvin Gordon when he's looked a lot better. So I'd probably go DJ and Lindsey.
Yeah, this is tough. I think if there's no Hyde and Chris Carson, and all reports indicate that Chris Carson is going to test the injury out on Friday, I think if there's no Carson and no Hyde, you definitely play DJ. You alluded to it, Jay. He wasn't all that efficient. I believe he had like 40 yards, maybe on 18 carries or something, but he had a couple red zone opportunities which he converted into touchdowns. The matchup is good. So you're right. That offense is just so nice. I mean, he missed a block where Russell Wilson almost got killed, and Russell Wilson had no problem. The very next play, just handing it off to him or throwing to him in the red zone. I think David Johnson, honestly, DJ he hasn't looked all that great this year, but he's safe in terms of just somebody who's going to get 15 carries. It's a game that they may be able to control against Jacksonville. And I was looking earlier and, potential, bold call. I didn't want to go all that bold with DJ being a top 10 back, but it's possible he could be against the Jags. I mean, the Jags have allowed 10 rushing touchdowns. It's 2 off the league high. They've allowed the 5th most rushing yards. They're a bottom 10 defense in terms of rush DVOA. Fantasy points, they're a bottom 10 defense. Yards per attempt allowed, they're a bottom 10. So it's just, a lot of the boxes that I look for, I mean, you can check them all off with DJ. So I think DJ is in there for me. And then the other guy is, I'll just go back to Fournette. I just think Fournette is going to start to take over this backfield. It was close between Fournette and Moss for me because I feel like Moss is another guy like Dobbins just starting to trend in the right direction. But yeah, I'll go DJ if those guys don't play, but Fournette and, DJ Dallas and then David Johnson.
Appreciate that, guys.
Good luck.
Thank you.
We got another question from our guy, Marty. PPR, Ingram, Gus Bus, or JK? Well, I think Ingram's out, or he hasn't practiced yet, so even if he does play, for me, out of those guys, I'm going JK. He's got the highest upside. He can. I've said it about a couple other guys. He make your whole day in one play. He looked really good this week. They finally got. I think he got 16 touches. Ingram is just a shell of himself. He fell off that cliff real quick, like these older running backs do. And then Gus Bus is just, if you need guaranteed 5 points, he's probably your guy, but you're not going to get much more than 10, 11 points if he gets in the end zone. I'm going to go with the upside for JK.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's JK. And, if you're a JK owner, heck, if you're a Gus Edwards owner and you've been playing him in deeper leagues, you just want Ingram to just stay away. Gus Bus has that opportunity to score a rushing touchdown and, in the red zone. That's what he did last week. But Dobbins has that pure upside. You saw the burst last week against the Steelers. Tough run defense. He did pretty well.
Dan, who you going with?
Yeah, I agree with both you guys. I think just on potential alone, you have to go JK.
All right, that's all our questions for right now, but feel free, guys, if you have any more, even if you ask one, go right ahead. We're going to jump into our 5 things, and we'll get to as many of these as we can. What it is we take 5 of I do an article for Going for 2 every week, 10 things to know about whatever week it is, and it's basically just kind of a hodgepodge, a little bit of a start, sit, buy low, sell high, just some basic, and I even throw in some basic fantasy tips for beginners, so it's a little bit of everything. First one we're going to go with is, and we're going to start with you, Chris. What is Lamar Jackson's rest of season outlook for fantasy purposes?
I think I still view him as a QB1. I don't view him as a top 5 quarterback, but I like the schedule. Indy this week, and then it starts to get a little bit tougher with New England and then Pittsburgh one more time. But week 13 is prime time against Dallas. Then he's got Cleveland, Jacksonville, the Giants. So that's almost as good as it gets. He's at least running a little bit. I was a bit concerned a couple weeks ago when he didn't practice all week because of the knee injury. And then there was a game, I forget who it was against, where he only had 1 rushing attempt for 1 yard. It doesn't seem like he was healthy, but he's running again over 170 rushing yards his last 2 weeks. The problem is it's not a high volume passing attack offense. It's not there. Hasn't been accurate. He's got a 60 completion percentage right now. He's 191 passing yards. It's not great. Yeah. So, but I still like, you have that little bit of a floor. When somebody averages about 40 rushing yards per game, it's almost like starting with a free touchdown. You just want him to be able to hook up with Brown and Andrews. None of these guys are really panning out this season. I would view all of them as buy low candidates. I look at Lamar and if do you own Josh Allen? Josh Allen plays week 14 against the Steelers. Do you want to play Josh Allen week 14 against the Steelers? No, you don't. So I've looked at some tough matchups. That's one that definitely stands out. And then, Deshaun Watson into Chicago week 14. I don't think that you could flip either of these guys for Lamar. It might take a couple pieces, but Lamar I'd rather have in crunch time than those guys.
Dan, what you think?
Yeah, I agree with Chris. I think, especially the fantasy playoff schedule. I mean, that's probably one of the better ones you're going to find for a QB anywhere. I know he's been struggling this year, but it just takes like a one big run or like a one big pass to Hollywood, and your weeks being made. So I think it's understandable that he's struggled. So I can understand why people might be leery of him. But I think for the rest of the season, he's someone that if you spent a pick on him, you're going to have to play him. So I think he'll do well for you. There could be some slight hesitation, but he should be okay.
Yep, and I think this is a perfect example to learn to not buy guys at their peak value. The reason Lamar was so valuable last year is because you got that first or second round production out of a guy that you drafted in the 8th, the 10th, the 12th round, depending on what type of league. When you take him in the first, second, third round, he's got to produce the numbers that he had last year in order to return value. Name of the game is value, so I think it's a situation to learn from. You live and learn if you took him that early. I think if he wasn't drafted around there, people wouldn't be freaking out quite as bad. He hasn't had those boom games yet. The defense has played a lot better. He has, like you guys said, he has not looked good passing the ball, and defenses are starting to figure him out. So until he can start connecting on some of those plays, and he's going to be right there, back end quarterback one. I'm with you on that one. And Kyle mentioned Dobbins over Edwards and Ingram because of pass catching. Absolutely. We got another question from YouTube. 2 quarterback leave. I have Big Ben, Kirk Cousins, and Jake Luton rostered. Someone dropped Tua. Do I drop Kirk or Jake Luton for Tua?
Luton immediately. No problem.
Yeah. There's no question that you do that. The Tua is going to have to throw the football a little bit more this week, so we'll see what he has, but he's got more upside. There's no question.
Yep, absolutely. And as ugly as Kirk Cousins' games are, so he can have a blow-up game too. So who knows what Luton's going to be. He's a Madden creative player.
You know what's going to happen now is because we're shitting all over him.
Like we're all on fire. And
that's going to be the end of us.
I think he was one of 3 college quarterbacks last year to have 21 touchdowns and fewer than 3 picks, but he just, didn't play in a great conference and can't really handle the pressure at all. And this is the big stage, so it's a huge yikes.
So Chris, do you think anybody in Dallas is worth buying low?
I don't think so. Maybe Zeke, but only because I feel like Andy Dalton will eventually come back. He's not going to play this week and then the bye week. And then the one full game that Zeke had with him, he had 11 targets and 8 grabs. It was just check down. Defense is not going to improve at all. It almost seems like they've given up on the season and the defense is just going to allow a ton of points, and maybe that benefits a guy like Zeke, and then he pops up on the injury report this week, and then you see that he has Pittsburgh and that he has the bye. So you really just have to be in a solid position. Again, when I was talking about buying or picking up Cam Akers, you just have to be near the top of your standings and just trying to plan ahead, plan your buys, plan the playoff schedule. I think he has Cincy week 14. That's not bad. That's a game maybe that Dallas could be hanging around. So he's the one guy that I probably would buy. I think in dynasty leagues, it's different. I think you have to check in on CeeDee Lamb. I mean, you can probably get Michael Gallup for cheap. I think that's maybe an offseason move where he joins another team. I don't see his future being in Dallas. They give the contract to Amari Cooper, and, they're going to have to pay Dak at some point if they want to. And then, you already have a lot of money dished out to other players on that team. And then they drafted CeeDee Lamb, who seems like the future there. So I think I'm honestly staying clear of most of these guys. I just don't really like the situation. It's just, you're just guessing on who's going to be the guy. Last week it was Gallup, but I think Darius Slay was on Cooper, and I think this week could be a Cooper week. So it's confusing. I think, again, if you're in a really good spot, you could probably get Zeke for dirt cheap, but you really need to, look ahead at your, fantasy playoff schedule and, bye weeks, and it's got to work out perfectly for you.
Yep, and I pretty much agree with just about everything you said. The only guy I would also consider in redraft is Cooper. He seems to be the one that hasn't taken quite as big of a hit as everybody else. CeeDee Lamb with Dak was averaging 17.1 points a game. He's dropped to 7.4. Zeke was averaging 23.1 points a game with Dak. He's dropped to 10. Cooper has only went from 17.8 to 12.6, so not quite as big of a drop. And he's the type of guy, he's got that low floor, but he can take an ugly pass from Ben DiNucci and take it to the house. And I'm with you. I think Dalton will be back sooner than later. So with Dynasty, I completely agree too. I would go for any of these guys. And 2-3 weeks ago, before Dak got hurt, there was absolutely zero chance you were trading for CeeDee Lamb.
Right.
But now, if somebody that has CeeDee Lamb is pushing for this year, and you're rebuilding, you can afford to hold on to them and deal with the low production. Now's the time to strike. You might have that window cracked open. A guy that's looking, flags fly forever. If you're looking to win, you take a hit and go for it. We're going to move on to the next one. And Chris, let's start with you as well. Who would you rather have the rest of the season, Jonnu Smith or TJ Hawkinson?
TJ Hawkinson, yeah. I don't even know if this one is all that close. I think we're starting to see the breakout from Hawkinson. 10 targets, career high 7 grabs from him last week. He's got 50 yards in every game but 2. We know about Golladay is not going to be around, so maybe a few more targets. That's not always a great thing. I thought Dan brought up a really good point when we were talking about Philly and Fulgham and just having Goddard on the field, and all the attention really just goes to that one guy if they just have one guy. So you could see potential, like it's possible they start doubling Hawkinson if he starts eating up teams and in short yardage situations and through the middle of the field, just a couple of dump offs. But I just really like his skill set. I think he's very, very talented. I look at end zone targets all the time, especially when I'm looking at tight ends. There's no tight end in football that has more end zone targets than he has. He's got a couple 1-yard touchdowns. It's really weird the way that they run their offense in Detroit. You think that they would just hand it off sometimes to a running back, but then they just sometimes they get too cute. But Hawkinson's been involved in those 1-yard plays right at the goal line, which is strange. But yeah, I really like Hawkinson, and I don't like this Detroit defense. And ever since Corey Davis has looked great, and he's right there with A.J. Brown in terms of fantasy points, targets per game, catches, yards. He's been very consistent, and that has hurt Jonnu Smith. Yep,
and to roll with that, in the 2 games that he played without A.J. Brown, Jonnu Smith had average 7 targets, 5 catches, 73 yards, and 17.8 PPR points. The 5 games that A.J. Brown has been back, that drops to 4 targets, 3 catches, 25 yards, and 8.7 PPR points. So, those games that Brown was out when he had all his production and he was an offseason sweetheart and everybody was looking at the Jonnu breakout. But with A.J. Brown and, like you said, Corey Davis producing, it's not there. So for me, I'm definitely going Hawkinson as well. Dan, you got any take on that?
Yes, I think I'm going Hawkinson too, especially with Golladay being out. I think that the resurrection of Corey Davis has really hurt Jonnu Smith. To you guys' point, I think without Golladay, there really isn't that many proven pass catchers besides maybe Marvin Jones on Detroit. So just from a volume perspective, I think that Hawkinson's will do better than Smith.
Absolutely. And Dan, we'll go right back to you with this one. What do you think the fantasy impact is of Gardner Minshew injury / being benched?
Armageddon for Jags players. I think that the only one that might possibly be okay is Robinson, and that's because he's probably going to get about 4,000 checkdowns, this game, because it's not the Lutton is going to be completely lost and he's not going to know what to do, and is just going to feed him the ball. Maybe the tight end there, but I just can't see trusting any kind of wide receiver or anything as long as he's starting.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how who his guy is. Like, we all expect maybe it to be DJ Chark, but it easily could be Keelan Cole, Laviska Shenault. It could be just because he doesn't have a great deep ball, and Chark's more of that deep threat. So it could be just trying to simplify the offense a little bit. Let's run the ball with Robinson. Let's use maybe Tyler Eifert a little bit. But Keelan Cole is a guy that, he's got a small A-dot. They use him all over the field, really, some bubble screens in the slot, and he could be just an easy completion, just keeping it simple for, Luton. And it's just not great, to be honest. Like, for anybody, it's not great. But at the same time, it can't be worse because Minshew has been brutal. He's been awful. He's near the bottom in terms of completion percentage. average yards per attempt. Like, he's just not checking any of those boxes. I understand they want to make him the scapegoat. He's dealing with an injury, but there was talk before that they were going to make the quarterback switch. Let's be honest. I mean, this team doesn't really have a whole lot to work with. He's not the reason they're losing, but it could provide a bit of a spark with the quarterback change. But this is, it's not great news for anybody, and it may not even be good news for Robinson too. You want to have a quarterback to stretch the field. You don't want to start stacking boxes, and you need to be able to stretch the field. I just don't know if you can do that.
Clearly on dump offs only. That's the only reason.
This is probably me just in my undying love for Laviska, but I'm hoping that this gets going back to getting creative with him and using him out of the backfield again, and maybe some wildcat and putting him at the quarterback position. So it's definitely stock down for everybody, but maybe they'll finally, it looked that way. His usage was going up, 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 and then all of a sudden it just stopped. So maybe that's when Gardner hurt his thumb. Who knows? But
schedule is actually pretty nice, Jay. Just to jump in, I mean, Houston this week is not bad. Green Bay, Pittsburgh, pretty tough. But Cleveland, Meaney, Tennessee, those are teams that you could really, throw. I was interested in getting Chark before this news happened, and you could probably maybe get him for dirt cheap. It's a very risky buy, but I really do like those matchups before the playoffs. I mean, I think they got Baltimore in there in the semifinal matchup potentially. You don't want to do that, but leading up to that, some pretty good passing matchups for Jacksonville.
Yeah, and you never know. It could be a situation, too, that if they're using this thumb thing, like I said it when Anthony Lynn kept on talking about that he was definitely going to put Tyrod Taylor back in. Maybe he's using the thumb as a scapegoat that if Luton goes out and completely falls on his face, he can go back to Minshew and not completely take out his confidence and say, well, the only reason we had you out is because your thumb, you're healthy, you're back in there. He got benched last year for Foles, and then Foles did what Foles does and fell on his face and came out and played good again. So you never know. Maybe you can buy Chark low and then Minshew come back in there and sling the ball.
Yeah, you can absolutely bar Chark low. I mean, there are some leagues where he's being dropped.
Yeah.
Traded. So,
I'd like to play in those leagues.
Right, for sure.
So obviously Chris Conley is going to be wide receiver 1.
Yeah, that's already happened. So once this season, right? Yeah, I think it was the Thursday night football game. It was like Conley. Yeah, Minshew, I think, was top 3 or 4 before last week. I know they didn't play in passing attempts. So as much as they want to simplify it and run the ball, they may not have a choice but to check.
Yeah, absolutely. We got another question from YouTube from Sean. 10-team PPR, 1 flex: Justin Jackson, Juju, Zach Moss, or Devontae Parker. I'm going to go Justin Jackson. It seems like it's turned into his backfield. There was 2 weeks ago where Joshua Kelly got more touches, but Jackson's producing. He's taken that Eckler role, and it's his backfield. Kelly's getting the short yard situations, but Jackson's been the guy. So for me, that's I'm going to go with him.
Yeah, I agree with you. He's looked, even 2 weeks ago when he wasn't 100% with the knee, he just caught a ton of passes, right? Yep. You talked about the Eckler role. He's getting a lot of usage through the air. He's definitely the goal line back, and Kelly just hasn't been efficient. And it looks like he's fallen to 3rd on that depth chart there. So yeah, I like Jackson. I actually like him a lot this week. I think he could, against Vegas, I wouldn't be shocked if he finishes an RB1 this week.
Yeah. Well, Sean, if you stick around, I got my bold call later, and it's Justin Jackson. So you see where I'm going to have him ranked this week. So, Dan, what you think? Who are you going to go with here?
Yeah, I'm agreeing with Jackson. I think to the ire of darlings everywhere, Joshua Kelly just hasn't been panning out as what people hoped he's been, and Jackson has taken that role with Eckler out and ran with it. So I think he has a plus matchup. I do think, however, that Zach Moss isn't a bad idea. I think that his matchup is pretty good as well, and if he can continue getting the goal line work, he could be someone that might produce as well.
It's a clean sweep with Jackson. I got another question from Kyle. PPR, Gus Edwards or Wayne Gallman? Even though Gallman looked decent, he got some touches last week, I'm still going Gus Bus here.
I thought maybe you'd go Gallman. Yeah, he has looked good the past couple of weeks. When he came in for Freeman against the Eagles, man, he just looked 1,000 times better than Freeman. I don't know if that's saying a whole lot, but he looked fresher.
I think Freeman's going to be back this week, so I just think it's going to be ugly with Lewis catching some passes.
Sure.
Taking those 2 guys in.
I do think that Gallman is ahead of Freeman the rest of the way, though. I think from the last couple of weeks that he looked fresher, it looked like he ran with a purpose, catching passes. I think he is ahead of Freeman, but I agree. There's more upside with Gus Edwards, especially, Dan, if there's no Ingram, right?
Yeah. And I still don't understand why they signed Devonta Freeman, but that's ghetto mania for you.
Yeah, no need of it.
Yeah, it's Gallman. I think Freeman was burnt toast when they signed him, so Gallman at least has a pulse.
All right. So we got a question from Marty. Eli or McNabb, who goes into the Hall of Fame? He wants to see a fight. Let's see.
All right. Here's a fight. Ready? Here's a fight. Eli doesn't deserve to be in the Hall of Fame over 2 throws. Go.
He's got 2 Super Bowl MVPs.
He doesn't deserve them. Those are Justin Tuck's MVPs.
Okay.
Not his.
All right. Justin Tuck threw the game-winning touchdown to beat the undefeated Patriots. I forgot about
No, he just kept Tom Brady from scoring enough so he could make that throw. He held him to 14
points. All right.
Oh baby, Mexico.
Yeah, I was at that game. I don't know if I ever told you that, Meaney.
No.
Yeah,
nice.
Me and my dad went out. We flew with no tickets. We flew out there the Thursday night before. We were looking around, and just the tickets were unreal, $3,000 each, and just we're like, we can't do that. And then we were looking around, and then the morning of, my wife will probably kill me for telling this story, but we said we wanted to spend $1,000 each. And apparently, at least at that time, scalping tickets was legal there. Like the guy literally had a card. He had a business. That was his business. So we told him, we met him in a bar, me and my dad, and said, if you get to 1,000, give us a call. The 11 o'clock morning of the Super Bowl, he calls us. He said, best I can do is 1,500. Said, Dad, what do you want to do? And we talked about it. We're like, you know what? We come all this way, fly from North Carolina to Arizona. We don't go, and they somehow pull it off. How pissed off are we going to be? So.
Yeah, you would have regretted it. You guys are probably super, super stoked, obviously.
It was one of the best nights of my life. It was
an experience that any sports fan, anybody, I mean, you guys know, and anyone watching right now, listening, it's just, it's an experience that's totally worth it. You just try to, put the money aside, and it's a memory that you'll have forever. And I think Eli deserves to be in there. I know a lot of people take some shots at the Super Bowls. I get it. A couple nice throws. I understand the defenses that he had on those years were pretty solid. 1 year they made, was it the year that they knocked off the Pats? They were the 6th seed and they just ran through like all the games on the road. And you got to give them some credit for some of those games. McNabb couldn't win that big game.
So besides the Super Bowl seasons, what do you do with the playoffs?
We're not talking about that. We're talking about
okay.
Yeah.
Just checking.
Yeah. All right. Next subject. We have a question that we missed. Let's go to a question from Jason Nestor from Facebook. DJ Moore, Marquis Brown, or Mike Williams? I'm going to go Mike Williams, although he's got the I'm tempted to go Hollywood Brown, with the whole squeaky wheel.
Yeah.
Mike Williams is the boom bust, but he's got the better matchup. So for me, and it seems that that Herbert really has liked him as well too. Even though he's feeding the ball to Keenan Allen, he seems to have developed some chemistry with Mike Williams as well. So I just don't trust DJ Moore. Robbie Anderson's taking over as the number 1 in that offense. So it's close. I would be okay with just about any of those guys, but I'm going to lean Mike Williams.
I'm gonna actually lean DJ Moore. These are all good options. I agree with you. I think Mike Williams. There's something there brewing between him and Herbert.
I remember talking to you about it, and you were telling me
big target. I think it was the game against the Saints, right? He took a couple shots deep down the field with them, and Mike Williams can go and get it. And I think Herbert realized that. And man, Justin Herbert has just looked unbelievable so far this season. But I just thinking maybe a high total game. Chiefs are gonna have their way. They're gonna score some points. So I think Moore is going to get – I just look at him as the guy who's probably going to lead these 3 wideouts and targets. So that's kind of how I view that matchup. And
I'm going to go Hollywood.
All right, there you go. We've confused everybody. Yeah. I don't think you can go wrong. I think some good spots.
We are no help. I think Hollywood, I think that this is the week he gets that big play. I think that for some reason Curtis Samuel is eating into DJ Moore's workload in Carolina but like you said, you can't really go wrong with any of them.
Yeah. That Brown, what did he have? 2 targets last week? 2 or 3?
Yeah.
The opening drive, Baltimore's first drive, he's going to top that.
Yep, absolutely. First play is going to be a screen to him or something like that because Lamar
Yeah,
can't hit.
it's a play action bomb.
Yeah.
We got a question from Periscope from Jason. Would you guys fire up Tyler Irvin tonight with Jones possibly being limited?
Yes.
It depends on your situation. I wouldn't start Irvin over Jones for me, and it's hard for me to say. I was not in on Jones. I thought that A.J. Dillon and Jamal Williams would be involved in this offense more, but he's proven he's a stud, and he's in that category now for me. If he's playing, I'm starting him. It's just as simple as that. Irvin might be decent low-end RB2 flex spot if you need him, not over Jones, but just as a warm body dealing with injuries and COVID and all that stuff. But he's a decent play, but I wouldn't start him over Jones.
Yeah, I agree. I don't really have much to add. I actually liked Dexter Williams slightly more than Irvin. If there was no Jones, I thought he was just going to get more carries, and he was the better pass blocker, even though he's not all that great in general. But I just thought he would be the guy that maybe got the goal line work there. He can catch balls out of the backfield. I mean, Irvin's more of that PPR guy. He was practicing with the wide receivers earlier on in the season. So I'm with you. You mean you start your studs, even Jones, if he just touches the ball 10 to 12 times, half of them could be inside the red zone, which is very valuable.
I think, yeah, sure, give Irvin a shot. If Jones might get, be on a pitch count, I think that when he has the balls in his hands, he has really great speed. So maybe he could get lucky and takes one to the house. I mean, Dexter Williams is probably going to get more carries, but especially if it's PPR, Irvin might make a dent there.
Okay. We got two more questions, and we're coming up on 8 o'clock. Meaney, I know you said you've got some hockey to go to. Very Canadian of you, which I love it. So we'll answer these two questions quick. PPR, Hasty or Harris?
I'm going to lean with Hasty, but it's really close. I had to double check my rankings here just to see how close it really was. Yeah, RB23, RB25 for Harris. So it is really close for me. I think that, the Pats have been so brutal, but this is a game where, they'll probably be up, let's be honest, and Harris should get some work. When they're down, it's more Burkhead, more White. But I will lean Hasty just because of what I said earlier with Shanahan. I just think he runs hard with a purpose. And the last 3 weeks, I've watched every single one of his carries, and I've been impressed with how I've been, rooting for him to get more touches. And I think that tonight is the matchup. Green Bay's allowed more fantasy points to running backs than anybody in football. And it's not just because Cook lit him up last week. A lot of backs have had their way with the Packers so far this year. So I'll lean Hasty there. But I think, again, Nick is in a pretty good spot with either of these guys.
And the receivers that the 49ers have, I think us three could be starting for them tonight if we were there. So, yeah, I'm going to agree with you on Hasty. And, Dan, I'm going to go to you quick on this. What do you think, Hasty or Harris?
Yeah, it's Hasty. I think you can't really trust Patriots running backs. I think Michelle might play. I think Harris had a good game, but Hasty should get more of the workload.
And we got another question from Sean from YouTube. Jonathan Taylor logged a full practice today and has no injury designation at the moment. Are you guys trusting starting him again? I can't go into it too deep because of we're running short on time. But I like Jonathan Taylor, not necessarily this week. It's a tough matchup. But he's still got a great rest of season schedule. After today, plays Tennessee, then Green Bay. After this week. Tennessee, Green Bay, Tennessee, Houston, Vegas, Houston, which are all great matchups. They're in the bottom half of fantasy points allowed to running backs. Green Bay is worst. Houston is third worst, and he gets Houston twice. The only thing is week 16, he does play against the Steelers, who is the toughest fantasy matchup for opposing running backs. Even though he's been a quote-unquote disappointment, he still scored double digits in 5 out of 7 games. Half of those games he scored 15 points or more. One of them was 14.9, but that's close enough. He's got one of the best offensive lines in football, so I think he's a buy low.
Yeah, I agree with everything that you said there. I don't know if I would start him this week, though, against Baltimore. I'm not totally confident, but now's the time to buy because of that, because of the dud game last week and then the fact that he has Baltimore this week. But you're right, Jay. I mean, the playoff schedule is phenomenal. I will say that Jordan Wilkins has looked better than him, not just the one game. I mean, he's avoided more tackles with fewer carries. His yards after contact, 3.4 to Taylor's 2.1. Frank Reich Dan knows this, with the Eagles. Everyone always says Doug Peterson, can't trust one running back. He's got to use them all. I mean, Frank Reich was calling most of the shots in their Super Bowl run with LeGarrette Blount, Corey Clement, and J.J. I mean, he was rotating through all of these backs. So I'm not shocked to see Hines get work and Wilkins. There were some reports before the season started that it was going to be Mack and Taylor, and we all went, yeah, right, whatever. I mean, it's definitely going to be Taylor. And I know it was just one game and Taylor was a rookie, but Mack was getting play. Yeah. And if Mack wasn't hurt, we'd be shaking our heads and be frustrated with this backfield. I think Taylor definitely has the most skill. I would buy because now's the time to buy, and I would hold. I wouldn't sell him. Now's the time not to sell him. You're not going to get proper value. He still has upside to be a high-end RB2.
I agree with both of what you guys are saying. I think Jordan Wilkins coming out of nowhere and getting a majority of the carries last week gives everyone great pause. I think that they're just going to rotate backs. Frank Reich, like you said, Chris, is not going to trust one guy. So I think to answer his question, you should be in wait and see mode. I wouldn't trust him this week.
And we're going to have to skip Dan's rookie risers and fallers, but he's got an article on Going for Two that talks about rookies that you can target on the waiver wire on trades that can help you win this week and the rest of the season. So be sure to check that out. We're going to go ahead and jump to Call Your Shot. It's where it's a bold call. You pick a guy that you like more than others this week and make a bold call. And Dan and I, Chris, I don't know if I've told you this or not, we're doing a year-long contest with it. Whoever does better, the other guy gets to design their Twitter avatar for the entirety of the playoffs. So
nice.
If I'm sure it'll be something with JJR, Eli Manning, or something
Can
along
you tell
with
the audience who's in the lead? Who's in the lead?
Dan is in the lead 2-1, which isn't saying much because we've been doing this for 9 weeks. So I've got one right and you've got two. So maybe we've been a little too bold with our calls. But Dan, we'll go ahead and start with you. What's your bold call for this week?
It's actually a guy we touched on just a couple minutes ago. I think that Tyler Ervin is going to break one tonight and get at least 10 PPR points.
Ooh, baby.
Okay. I could see it. We'll see. Chris, do you have one for us?
Yeah, I got a bold one, that's for sure.
Okay.
Drew Lock, top 8 fantasy quarterback this week. So I know, Jay, you took a shot at him earlier. I was chuckling and I was like, geez, I might have to come in here with a new bold prediction, but I'm going to roll with it. He's a top 8 fantasy quarterback last week, and the matchup is great this week. It is
an awesome matchup.
It's really all about that, to be honest with you.
Sorry.
That's it. I mean, you look at the Falcons overall, they've allowed the second most passing yards, a league-high 20 passing touchdowns, 39 plays of at least 20 yards. That leads the league. And the most fantasy points to quarterbacks are ranked 29th against the past DVOA. So it's mostly because I like where Noah Fant is trending. He's trending up to me. He looks healthy. In terms of targets per game and catches per game, he's top 5 among tight ends. He's got 16 targets and 10 grabs over the last 2 weeks. This Falcons team is they're a complete mess defensively. They moved Jerry Jeudy outside. Looks like he can handle that. KJ Hamler in the slot. I think Phillip Lindsay is another bold call. I think he's ahead of Gordon. I have Lindsay ranked ahead of Gordon this week. I think he's starting to trend up, and he just looks like the better back there. So I know it's Lock, and he's really hasn't shown us anything so far this season besides just awfulness. But I think this is a decent spot for him to get right.
And some decent dance moves when he scored the touchdown.
That felt awkward to me.
It's so awkward watching him dance out there.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. So mine, I won't get too detailed, but Sean, if you stuck around, mine is going to be Justin Jackson finishes an RB1. So for top 12 this week, like we talked about, Vegas is a great matchup. He seems to be the lead dog. Herbert has this offense humming. Their defense is terrible. So I just think it's a recipe for success. And if you got Justin Jackson for free, you're very happy right now. So that's going to be it. We do have a few things to wrap it up. Meaney, I appreciate you hopping on with us. And what we do is we have our guests bring something that the fantasy community does not know about them. So what's something interesting that you can share with the world?
I don't know if this is totally interesting, but when I worked at a company called FNTSY and I was let go from them, and I was bouncing around at a couple different fantasy spots and doing some freelancing, I actually went out west and worked in the oil patch at the same time. So I don't know if that's an interesting tidbit, but for anybody out there who wants to just not work in the oil patch, but wants to get into the fantasy industry, don't be afraid to go for it. And if it means going in the oil patch and Alberta up north in Canada and minus for the Canadians out there minus 40, which would be like minus, I don't know what, 10, 12 for you guys. I'm not good with the conversion, but
I'm not sure. Marty might know the conversion.
Marty would know for sure. It was interesting. I got a little discouraged what I was going to do. I worked at a classic rock radio station back in the day, and it wasn't a great field to get into, and there was a lot of layoffs in radio, and I lucked out into finding that job at Fantasy, and then I went in the oil patch and I worked for 2 years while writing articles at the same time in a truck in the middle of nowhere. So awesome. I guess that's interesting. It's not totally interesting, but it's something that probably nobody knows about me. I'd say that.
That's 100%. Yeah, I had no clue, and I've been I've been listening to you since the FNTSY days a few years ago and the Athletic, and so again, I really appreciate you coming on here with us. If you want to plug your stuff, tell everybody where they can find you.
Yeah, sure. I mean, at Chris Meaney's the biggest thing. Obviously, working over at FTN. Got the 3 websites there: ftndaily.com, ftnfantasy.com, ftnbets.com. It is a subscription base, but it honestly does pay for itself. There's a lot of great minds over at FTN, and we're hanging out in the Discord chat, answering questions all the time. You can use that promo code Meaney, get you a discount. But one thing I'll just say is just head on over there. There's a lot of free tools you just get lost in. I brought up air yards, offensive line, defensive line. There's just so many free tools and access to a lot of data.
Position right too, right? I was messing around with that the other day, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you can get lost right in there. I mean, I get lost every Monday morning after the week. I just bury myself into all these statistics, and yeah, it's pretty neat. We're building something pretty cool. I have the show Mean Streets, which is absolutely free, a couple times a week. I appreciate it, and anytime you guys want to talk football, ask any questions, always feel free. I'm always around.
Well, and we got the biggest, most important question here. We ask all our guests, even though it's not fantasy football related. Any sports fan has a take on this. Dan and I both agree Michael Jordan is the greatest of all time. What's your take? LeBron James or Michael Jordan?
You guys probably won't invite me back anymore. This is really tough for me. I'm going LBJ. I'm going LeBron James. I know. I see Dan shaking his head. What the heck is going on? I talked to you guys a little bit about this before I came on. It was just early teen, like 11, 12, maybe in those mid-90s.
How old are you again? I know we talked about it.
I'm 35.
Okay, so you're older than I am. I'll be 34 in 2 weeks.
A little bit too young to respect what Jordan did, but honestly, you can't deny that he's a complete winner. With a game on the line, if you ask me any basketball player in Game 7, it really would be Michael Jordan. But I have a lot of respect for LeBron. Overall, I think he's more of a complete player. Field goal percentage, 3-point percentage, more assists, more rebounds. Obviously, he's played a lot longer. But what he did early on in his career, taking those brutal Cleveland teams to the finals, I just give him a lot of respect for that. I mean, the only player with just like 3 NBA final MVPs on 3 different teams. Like, yes, Davis was probably the best player he's ever played with, but Jordan had some great players on those teams too. And I hear people say, and we talked about this before, is that Jordan beat up on brutal teams. It's not the case. He went through some very, very tough teams and some really good teams in the mid-90s that he took care of. And when he jumped into the league, he was on the Bulls were brutal. They were awful, and he put them on the map. Yeah, anybody that watched The Last Dance could know that without even watching, like Jordan's career. But I'll lean LeBron here, and finals in 9 of the last 10 years. I don't think he's done either. So you talk 6 championships, 4. I think he could potentially get to 6, but the efficiency is definitely there with Jordan. And man, that guy is a complete competitor. I would never bet against him in a win or go home matchup.
Absolutely.
I got to give some votes to LeBron. I mean, it's heavy Jordan here, guys. Come on.
We're up to 7-2 for Michael Jordan, and everything you said is completely true for me. And I've tried to preface with this every time. Just saying it's Jordan doesn't. I'm not trying to disrespect LeBron. There's LeBron haters out there, and people say, "Oh, you're a LeBron hater." You can't deny his greatness. But yeah, and Kyle, our guy Kyle, always says,
"There it is."
says Will Chamberlain. I knew that was
Nice.
coming.
Nice.
Like you talked about, the killer instinct is what puts Jordan over the top for me.
Yeah.
So it's picking straws or whatever. You could pick one or the other. It's fine.
Jordan was a better scorer, right? I mean, he was. Yeah, even
and
though
LeBron is a better all-around player, so I'll give you that. He could legitimately in today's NBA play any position.
Yeah, I think that's why I give him the edge. I love his playmaking ability. I just love the way that he involves his teammates, and sometimes people take shots at him. He's not, he doesn't want to take that big shot, but
I'm one of those that takes a shot at him for that. So.
Yeah, I get it. I think he learned something in that loss to the Mavs that year where, he wasn't taking that shot. He was passing it off to, Bosch or Wade or Chalmers, but there's a lot of times when you watch him, he makes the right play, and guys are wide open, right? Danny Green, that one game, I think it was in the finals, like dude was wide open. I mean, he dished the ball over to him. He makes the right play. I think he's a better playmaker. They're both probably the same defensively. I'd probably maybe give that edge to Jordan there, but it's close, man. I mean, both of these guys obviously are GOATs.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we got to wrap it up. I know you got to get the hockey again. Truly appreciate you coming on with us. It's a great conversation. We'll love to have, even though you voted LeBron, we'd love to have you on again in the future. You can find my work at goingfor2.com. I do a 10 things to know about this week, week 9. It's going to come out tomorrow afternoon. I'm also doing at sleeperwire.com. I do a start sit that's going to come out tomorrow. We will be back next Thursday with another guy from FNTSY alum, Mike Florio. He's with the NFL Network now. He's going to hop on with us next week. You can follow me on Twitter at GMenJ. Dan, where can we find your stuff?
I read an article at Ongoing for Two. It's rookies to own for the week. You can follow me on Twitter at EagleDanFF.
And that's going to be it, everybody. Appreciate it. Again, Chris, thank you. Go kick some butt in hockey, and the Eagles suck. So we'll talk to you guys later.